Going live. We are live. Good afternoon. Or Ian, good morning. Martin, good day. Everyone else, can you hear me? Let me know in the chat. I think it should be good. I hope it should be good. I think I've got the balance between the mic and the, what do you call it? The audio sorted. So is the mic too loud, the audio too loud, or whatever? Hey Joe, how you doing, brother? Nice one. Yeah, it's been a long time coming, but I've figured out some shit inside OBS that has allowed me to turn up the volume on the mic. So good stuff. Cool. Got a few tracks in. There were actually quite a few this month that didn't make it through for not being able to be downloaded. Yeah, that's the way it is. Make sure that you enable downloads, and also something that people do a lot is just copy the URL out of the browser. You need to click share so that you send a private link, because if you just copy the browser URL, I don't have access to the file, so it comes up with, because it's private, right? So keep that in mind when you're sending your files. We're going a little bit early this month, so this is kind of like the start of February stream, which would normally be next week, but I'm going to be in Sydney. So anyone in Australia and New Zealand, I want to see you on the dance floor. I'm playing Sydney, Melbourne, Wellington, Auckland, and Shipwrecked Festival. So jump on Instagram, check out the dates, and let's do it. Nice man, nice one, Ian. Downpour, my man. Okay, let's just jump straight into it. We got one here. Grant, Sydney is fire? Yeah, man. You coming? Come to the show. Or if you're based in Sydney. Okay. We got one here from my man Unknown Vibes. Let's do it. Sounding really solid so far. I would like to hear a little bit of automation or delay on that stab. Nice change up on the melody there. It sounds good, it's just getting a little bit repetitive at this stage. Probably a little bit more volume on that vocal. Right, I mean, I think pretty good, like very solid structure. I think I remember on the email he said that it came together pretty quickly. I think you could probably, so like I said, it sounds, it's quite repetitive. So what's there is really good, but I think there's room for like a bit more dynamics, and I don't mean that in a mixing sense, I mean that in like a kind of arrangement sense, like just bringing some things in and out, having some kind of change ups. Like, I'm not saying this works for this track, but you know, like in some tracks you might have like a section where it goes to a breakbeat, or you know, just something switches up, you change to the main melody, you like, so that when you skip, if you skip through the track, see, it's very linear. So I think just, yeah, creating a bit more evolution and change over the track. So I think that's, you're in a super solid place. It's just about switching things up a little bit, and yeah, wicked. The vocal, I think maybe a little bit louder. It could be swapped out for something else. It's not like super catchy or something, but it's also not terrible. Also, like adding a bit more effects or delay or something to it, just make it a bit more of a feature. It feels like a little bit of a afterthought to throw it in. But yeah, good stuff. Let's go Iru. I use Ableton Live as a DAW. Windows 10 is an operating system, which I do use. Those kick fills there were just way too much, way over the top. You need to bring out the bass on some other things and make the what do you call it, make the sub a little bit less when you're doing the kick fills. Thanks for the feedback on the volume of the voiceover. Right, I think so. The track is kind of, it's not quite to my taste, but speaking like objectively about it, I think there's like a really cool idea in there, but it feels very like robotic to me in terms of like it doesn't have a lot of groove. I'm not sure if that's what you're going for. In most cases, in any music, people want some kind of groove in it, and I feel like everything feels quite robotic in this. Also, you've got like a lot going on in here, so what I would try and do, especially to give things a bit more space and room to breathe, I would try and make the drums a bit tighter, so everything's a bit snappier and everything has a little bit more space to breathe. I think the vibe of kind of the idea is really cool. I just feel like the execution is maybe a bit over the top. It could be, and I do this a lot, one of those things where you shelve it for a month or two and then come back to it with fresh ears and kind of almost like try and remix your own track. But it feels a bit like you've kind of thrown everything at it and not really subtracted the things that aren't necessary. So I think there's a process of like refinement that needs to be done in order to kind of get this over the line. Grant, you mentioned that, no, Jesus, you mentioned that the mic was a bit loud. Can you please let me know if it's still a bit loud? Okay, let's jump in here with Nicholas. Abduction. All right. Again, not really my style, but like it seems like it's really well put together. All the sounds kind of are like, there's nothing that stands out like going, oh, that doesn't fit. It all sounds like really cohesive, and it's really well balanced in terms of the mix, which is great. I will say that like it's quite like all the elements kind of come in and are pretty static. There's not like huge amounts of automation going on, which is like something I feel is super important, especially if you're trying to make simple tracks. There's also not like a lot of details. Like there is details in terms of like you've got these kind of like glitchy textures and stuff that happen in the background, but they in their own right present like a bit of a problem. Like they take up a lot of space in the mix, so the mix sounds quite crowded with those glitchy kind of textures. I think it would be nice to have some moments where you get a bit of a break from them or something, but also just like having some movement in some of the elements, or a bit more movement in some of the elements. I get that it's supposed to be kind of like loopy techno, and maybe having it like this gives room for a DJ to do stuff like I don't know. Maybe that's the aesthetic of this type of music, but I just feel like it felt a bit linear in terms of like what's going on. There wasn't like a lot of tension and release in terms of the arrangement, like not the structure of the arrangement, but the kind of automation aspect of the arrangement. So I think that could be definitely improved. 30 seconds is quite a long time to have just a pad and a kick. Just saying. But what you've got here does sound pretty cool. Vocal could be a little bit louder, a little bit more in the front. Okay, so I'm getting a bit sick of the main synths. They're really nice, but they're just not doing anything. They're just kind of sitting there, very static. Yeah, vocals definitely too low. Yeah, I mean, this is really good. And this one is definitely in a style that I'm familiar with. I really like it. I think that, yeah, it's just literally a matter of like automating some of the elements, working it a little bit more, turn that vocal up, make it a feature rather than it just feels like it's kind of hidden in the background, which there's like, I know it can be tempting to do that and think that that's like, you're just like, oh, I just want it to be there, but not really there. Like it, I don't know, I think a way to look at, especially vocals, but kind of any element is it's like, if you keep kind of turning it down and wanting to tuck it back more and more, maybe just turn it off. I think that's something that I do myself. If I find myself trying to like pull the volume down or like take out more frequencies or whatever, I just try turning it off, and most of the time it's what I actually wanted was to turn it off. But yeah, I think really solid tune. Ollie Berlin, 99, spelled all funky. So the sound you've got happening on like the downbeat every 4 bars or something, that one, I feel like it's cool, but it needs a bit more, and it needs like maybe some delay, or it just needs to fit a little bit in the track. It feels like a little bit outside of the track. Really nice, really good use of that vocal in the break to kind of create tension and create a bridge there. To give a little bit of context to Unknown Vibes about what I was saying, like if you listen to this, there's a definite evolution across the track. So I think that's really important for a track. If you skip through it and it all sounds the same, you kind of want to go in and do something about that, in my opinion. There you go, and here's Ollie again demonstrating just some subtle automation, which just makes everything feel so much more alive. So I don't even need to listen. I can see where this is going. And I think until this point here, this was like everything was going right in this track. I think this you've kind of lost me in this breakdown. It's getting too drawn out, and then you're going to use the snare roll, and then probably bring in the vocal and some bits to like, which is a bit generic, but it's kind of like you've lost the kind of captivating vibe that it had, and then you're not giving me something to like get me excited by the drop. So here,
love, freedom, love.
So I think you could definitely shorten this break. There was a bit where, I don't know, you brought in like a bass line or something. There, like I think it's just this other bass sound, but filtered down. But like somewhere around here, you could maybe do something like bring in the bass line. You've got it all stripped out, and you kind of like just try to put yourself in the context of someone on the dance floor. How long is this section here? Like 30 seconds of almost nothing going on. It's fine to like build it down, but then you need something to like build it back up, and you've got to kind of like weak source snare roll, and then just generically bringing in a couple of the vocal bits, and it kind of, I think it lets down the effort and the execution of the rest of the track. So just like maybe just try a few different versions of something cool in here, something different. Like bringing in the bass line, but like not bringing in all the hats and stuff like that. Then maybe you could bring in like a kind of mid-range pad or something that like builds up and gets all kind of big and opens the cutoff. You've got this kind of snare roll, but maybe you could do it with like some like shakers or something like that, because if you've got the bass line that's kind of there but not like just on full power, just kind of maybe a little bit of the subs EQ'd out and maybe a little lower in volume, but it's there giving something to like groove to. And if you think about yourself in the club at that moment, it's like the power starts coming back, but it's not all the way back, so that kind of thing creates tension, right? So then how can you like get people excited for what's about to happen, and then boom, have it happen. Also, like this is quite disjointed from the drop, so you kind of like want to just lead up to that. And Anthony said in the chat here, breakdowns are hard. They are my Achilles heel. They're really hard, man. And I think the best thing that we can do as producers is look at how other people do stuff. Like you don't have to kind of exist in a bubble in order to be an artist. Like get inspiration from stuff that you love. Like, and it doesn't have to be house music. You listen to a drum and bass track or an acoustic track. Listen to like, I don't know, Sepultura. How do they make their like chorus exciting or whatever? Listen to, I don't I don't know. Listen to some other shit. Listen to the Rolling Stones. I don't know. But just try to understand the concept of like keeping people engaged and creating that like that feeling of like anticipation. But all that said, so I think some of that applies to like probably every track in here and my own tracks. That's what you should be aiming for at the end of the day. Like a good mix and a good master are irrelevant if your track isn't like connecting with people. That's what writing music is about, you know. That's what music is about. It's about communication. But that said, Ollie, this is sick. This is one of the best tracks I've heard from you. So I'd really like to see this like sorted out and get that shit signed, mate. Mirage. Am I going to see you in Sydney? It'd be cool. I know you live a bit outside, but that'd be really nice surprise to see you pop up at my gig. Such a sick vocal on that Seal track. Really nice. I think Mirage is going to get banned from the live streams because it always makes me feel too self-conscious about my music because it's so well produced. I could see this on like All Day I Dream or something like that. I don't know. What do you guys reckon in the chat? I do feel like these kind of like this woodwind thing, flute or whatever here could have come up in volume a bit more to create a bit more intensity. Even if it doesn't like drop in here, I think it could provide a little bit more satisfaction by kind of becoming the main focus a little bit more. Other than that, really sick. Really, really good. Yeah, as I said, like Mirage is probably going to get banned because it just makes me feel too self-conscious about my music, and that's not what I'm here for. It sounds really unique as well. Like it sounds like it fits with other music, but also like it sounds original, which is really, really great to hear. So good stuff, bro. Grant's liking it. Yep, I agree, Grant. And yeah, I tried switching the chat over there because I thought it would be better looking at the camera, but then I realized that my camera is would be over the top of the chat, so it makes no sense. All right, on to the next. Sounds really, really solid. Like the mix is fantastic. I mean, to be honest, I don't really have too much to add. I'm personally not like I find this kind of, I don't know, it's almost like got a jazzy type of influence to it, some of this kind of organic house, which I find personally quite boring. But people who are into this kind of music, I think, will find this fantastic. To be honest, I don't really have a great deal to add because I think it's super, super well done. not hugely memorable. Like it doesn't have, for me, it doesn't have like a discernible hook that I would like recognize. I mean, I think that's beneficial in any music, in any style, in any genre, especially kind of given the landscape of how much music there is out there. But there is a lot of music in this style released like this. So yeah. Hopefully that's helpful to some degree. Back and forth, there's a link in the description of the video, mate. This kind of like repetitive vocal texture thing that you've got going on, I think it's letting the track down a little bit. It's a bit annoying, or at least not to my taste anyway. Yeah, I just feel like the track would sound a bit more polished without it. That kind of like 30-second note on the snare roll sounded a bit whack. So I think like in general, I really like the track. I think that vocal repetitive thing, just mute it, just take it out. Like I said, the thing on the snare roll was a bit like over the top. And then in terms of, so one thing that I think can be quite easily improved is in the synths, everything is quite mellow. There's nothing that's kind of has a bit more bite or aggression, and I think that's something that you could easily add to create some kind of contrast and also give some drive to the track. The problem when you've got like a bunch of synths that all have quite gentle attacks, have a lot of delay and reverb on it, is they all kind of start blending together, and it kind of, it's not like muddy in the kind of like low mid sense of muddy. It kind of starts to lack definition, right? So I think you could with anything, whether it's with your drums, with any part of a track, having like juxtaposition and contrast is really important, and it just helps the track to sound more like, yeah, I mean, if something is really subby, it feels unbalanced, but when you put some like tambourines or shakers on the top, it starts to feel more balanced. So the same thing when something's got a lot of reverb on it, if you have then something that's like got less reverb and is really like kind of sharp and has like a sharp transient and percussive, then it creates kind of balance and separation. So I think for like the drums on this track feel like they're kind of like the weak points to me. Cool use of the sample, the bass line's really nice. I think if you reference like R Squared or Iglesias, some of those kind of dudes, then yeah, check out their drums. I think your drums kind of could have a bit more detail, maybe a bit more impact. They feel a little bit weak and a little bit generic. I think they're letting the track down a bit, and I think if you improve that, the whole track could like definitely level up for sure. Even just with a bit more highs, it sounds already like has a bit more energy and a bit more drive, but that's a terrible way to do that. You want to do that with the volume balance of your hats and stuff like that. Don't just put an EQ on your master.
Understand what that feels like. I couldn't do it without him. I wouldn't want to. Oh, I'm crying now. Feels so good to be free. To be accepted for who you are and loved no matter what. Oh Lord, thank you. You are the joy of my life.
So you've got this, I think it's a vocal that's going doot, 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 doot. It comes in the break. So I think what you could do is like double that with a synth or something, especially for this build up. That's gonna, because there's like, again, it's kind of like about putting stuff in the right place in the frequency spectrum to create that intensity. You know, there's like, if you look at the spectrum, there's like kind of a gap there where things could be happening, also in the highs. You know, so if you put this sound in a place where there's space, you can then kind of do more with it because it's not going to affect the other sounds like the vocal and stuff, that are the snare rolls. And then just, yeah, create more tension so that the drop has more impact. Cool. Good stuff. I think there's like a really cool track in there that just needs to be like, yeah, finessed a little bit.
We live here, and it makes you look like something or act like something that you really aren't.
I don't think that there's, I don't know. Think about how someone's going to interact with your track. How are they going to play it? Whatever. Right? Is this intended for Spotify? Or if so, just start where the vocal is, right? If it's intended for a DJ to play it, I don't really know any DJs that will mix in a record within like 15 seconds in order to have this vocal doing something. You know, like the reason to put an element like this in a track is to create some kind of feeling and emotion and engagement from the listener, right? And if they can't hear it, then it shouldn't really be in there, right? So this is what I'm getting at, is this is the point where the track's going to be mixed in. So that vocal's not going to be coming in. There's going to be something else playing in the other track. But you've already kind of introduced it. So it's already been, you've already kind of taken away the element of surprise of adding it later.
Falseness. It's like a masked personality. Just made me so narrow that I couldn't really do.
A nice observation, Alan Craft, but if I loop all the tracks, then they're going to be at the BPM of the tempo, the BPM of the project. I think the bass is cool, but it's a bit like, it could be a bit more snappy in terms of the envelope, maybe with the filter and the amplification envelope. Hey, no messing around. This is a very serious broadcast. Yeah, I think like definitely now that you've brought more elements and stuff in, I would definitely tighten up that bass, make it a bit more subby. There's kind of like a bit of crossover happening between some of your elements, which is making it feel a bit muddy and a bit cluttered in the low mids. Like if I filter this kind of here. Well, that's not working. That's on the wrong freaking track, isn't it? Here we go. You know, those things are kind of there. There we go. You can hear it better there. There's like a bit of overlap between the bass and this kind of organ thing. Yeah. But so I think yeah, I think there's also a kind of, there could be some refinement to be done, like just there's a lot going on, a lot to listen to. It feels a bit crowded, to be honest. Like like a lot of things fighting for my attention. What's this? What's the chat saying? A good reference for this would be Coulter Stepan. Okay, but yeah, I think it's cool, but I think there could be some elements to be taken out and a little bit of work to be done in the mix in the low mids. Nice sound design here. I think the drums are kind of holding back a little bit of what could be working in the track. Like, let me see if I can warp it and try and demonstrate what I mean. 122. That doesn't seem right. All right, maybe it is right. Okay, 122 it is. And then let's go like this, and maybe 707 or something. And put in a MIDI track. And where's the ride? Just with a bit more of an aggressive kind of techno ride coming in here. I feel like you could really up the ante on the track. So you kind of bring this in, you bring in this ride, but it's just a bit weak, I think. You know, maybe, you know, even for what I'm doing here, I would like add some drive. You know, I think you get my point. I think that would just really kind of up the ante on the track. With the 909 hi-hat, that's a bit like what I was meaning. I feel like the break, it's cool, but it feels very disconnected from the track, and it's very long. I think what you've got here is, I mean, you've been sending in tracks for quite a while, and I think this is like one of the standout submissions that you've made. It's really, really good. The sound design is fucking awesome, and I feel like there's like some really amazing ideas here, but now it's time to kind of like edit it into a more functional dance floor track. That would be my suggestion anyway. I think the break has some cool aspects to it, but it kind of doesn't it's from a functional perspective, it's not quite there. So I think, yeah, but I mean, you're in a good place. You've got like, man, the sound design is really, really sick. Amazing use of some serious distortion on some of those elements. So I think this kind of like sustained bass sounds, it almost sounds like an initialized preset from a synth or something. I think if you have something that has a bit more attack on the filter, so that it kind of has a little bit of a pluckiness at the start and then comes right down, maybe with a bit of like chorus and a bit more character to it. Think about, like a respace kind of thing. I'm just trying to think of the track, because I think this is from the track was submitted by Ethan Duthie. So I know you're familiar with Hot Since 82's music because you've released on his label, right? So I think he's got the track I'm thinking of is maybe called Therapy. I don't know. It's got a long sustained bass line, maybe Vapors. But have a listen to that. It's got a kind of this style of bass, but it's a lot more subby. There's a lot more, but there's still a lot more character to it, and it leaves space for the other elements to exist, and it also feels a bit more dynamic. This kind of, I can kind of picture the waveform for this, and it's just like a sausage going all the way through.
Don't lie, get what you want. Just love me endlessly. If you want freedom, then why do you come? If you can't feel love, then tell me you don't. Tell me you don't. Tell me you don't.
Yeah, really nice track. Cool vocal, cool vibe. I think the mix on the drums and stuff is a bit like a bit weak, but that can always be fixed. I think the main thing is the bass, sort that out, and then get the drums kind of punching a bit more, and it's really solid stuff. Grant, you asked a super off-topic question. What does it mean, bounce everything from 0 to the end? I assume that means from like here, from right at the start to the end of your arrangement. Okay, Shallow, Feelings, Oscar, Hartek remix. this kind of sounds quite unfinished in terms of like, it sounds quite early stages, and what I mean by that is it feels like it's missing a hook. It's very loopy. It's not really, there's not really much going on to keep me engaged or keep me listening. The like little vocal sample that you've got there is nice enough, but it's not really doing anything to, it's not like touching me emotionally. There's not any track that I think that has like a cool vocal, you still want to have like a melodic hook somehow, or a percussive hook, or whatever it is. Like, I think any track needs at least like one or two elements that you can recognize as being unique or specific to that track. So I think I don't normally say you need more elements in the track to people, but in this case I think you need more going on in the track, and specifically think about how you're creating a hook for the track. Randall Dean and Gold Girl.
Conmigo, güero. Panama.
So the reason I was looking at the spectrum here is because I was trying to figure out if the kick is high passed, and I don't think it is. So that's really, really high for a kick. I'm just going to pitch the track down, and I'll go here, warp it, and so it's going to, the rest of the track's going to sound a bit shit, but the kick will hopefully sound a bit more kind of punchy and full on. See, when it's up at that kind of, it's like punching it around, what was it, 75 hertz or something? 70 hertz. Normally I would expect a kick to be ideally around 50 hertz, and that tends to be the sweet spot. Anything above that, kind of the kick starts to sound quite boxy, like it doesn't have a lot of power, and in this case it almost sounds like it's being high passed. I think also, I mean, you limited this really heavily, I believe. I think, if I remember correctly, it was about like -6 LUFS, and what that's done to all the instrumentation is like pushed everything like into the front, which I tend to find really, it makes the listening experience very tiring when it doesn't really have a lot of depth. So I think that tends to be something that, I mean, people mix stuff loud, or people master things very loud, but you want to do that consciously while trying to maintain the depth in your track. So like this guitar is kind of overpowering the vocal a bit, even though the vocal's very loud.
vamos a bailar, vamos a gozar, con mi falda corto, chupa y esa trago, con mi chacalita.
Yeah, so what I would recommend is like going back to the mix down on this and taking off the limiting. I personally mix with some limiting on, but I'm definitely not trying to get it to, let me just find out what this was at. Let's pull it down here. Yeah, so like the process of getting a mix to this volume does not really happen on the master bus. If you want it to sound good, it happens like in the mixing process. If you want some information about getting your mixes loud, there's a big like tutorial, what do you call it, like a tutorial series by someone called Bathymetrics on YouTube, that goes into all sorts of information about clipping, limiting, saturation, gain staging, and they've got a whole kind of strategy to it. But it is focused around bass music, so whatever. Bathymetrics, okay. Yeah. So I would go back to the mixing on this because it just sounds like everything's too in your face. I feel like there's not enough depth for it. Anthony, she's so good. The whole series is amazing. Yeah, I've looked at bits of it. I do some of it already when I'm mixing, but I think it's also quite there's a lot of knowledge to be gained by checking it out, but the implementation in terms of house music is like, if you just follow it blindly without customizing it to the style of music that you're making, then you end up with music that kind of sounds a bit like this, what Randall submitted here, where everything's really in the front and pushed, and that for certain types of music that's exactly what you want. For others it's not. The synth that's come in, I think I recognize it from a sample pack, which is never really a good thing. If you have like a really prominent sound that you're using from a sample pack, I think it's always a good idea to try to replay it. That way you can kind of tweak the filter and stuff like that. But at the very least, it sounds like it's got a lot of processing, reverb and stuff on it. So I would recommend trying to get rid of that as much as possible, because it sounds a bit disjointed from the rest of the track. So like, try and remove that reverb as much as you can, and then put some kind of like universal reverb on it. Like I have reverb on my track, on my template here, which I put onto like synths and stuff like that. Another one here where there's a lot of stuff going on in this low mids kind of area. It feels very crowded with not much going on outside of that. Oh, Right, so we've got that. And then bugger all going on up here. Now, I get it. This area here between like 100 hertz and 600 hertz sounds really cool, and things sound aggressive and sound like intense. And stuff just sounds cool when it's down there. But if everything's down there, it creates like muddiness in your track. And something that's really important to keep in mind is like this area here between like 900 hertz and like 4K is where the definition and the presence of the human voice is at, and our like whole auditory system is designed to listen to that. Like that's why, you know, with taste or not, whether you want vocals in your tracks, it's pleasing to most people, or having like, and it's like also what's recognizable and memorable. Like, so guitar leads, pianos and everything sits around this kind of area, right? That's the personality of your track. And your track has no personality at this point if there's nothing going on in there, you know? So the vocals pitch down, all the synths are down here. You need to like move some of those elements, or select different elements that sit in different places on the frequency spectrum, right? You know, maybe some synths that sit higher, or something around here, or a vocal that's not pitched down. I don't know. You know, you can kind of like, I think it's easy for people to also say like, oh, but that's not the style of music that I'm making. It applies to pretty much every style, whether it's like hard techno to ambient. You know, you want things spaced out in that frequency spectrum. It makes the track feel more open. It makes the mixing process so much easier when everything has their own, every element has its own kind of space to exist in. You don't have to do as much work to try and get them to fit together. And that's like a big part of mixing is it starts at the writing process. It starts with the sounds you select and the way that you put them into the track together. Different style of track, same thing again. There's like, it's like what you've got there is well executed and well implemented. Same with the last one, but there's nothing to like grab me. You're welcome, Evan. What's that vocal doing? It's like, is it there or is it not there? You know, like, you're trying to speak to people with your music. You should be trying to speak to people with your music, you know? If you want something in there, turn it up. If it doesn't sound good when it's up and you keep wanting to turn it down, turn it off. So that's, I didn't expect that to come in, but that's an arrangement thing, right? By 2.5 minutes into a track, you've got to give me something to grab onto to keep me listening, right? Like, and this is even outside of the whole streaming thing. Like, if this track gets played on Spotify, I can almost guarantee that there's going to be no one listening by the time that vocal comes in, because the way that people interact with music in that regard is like, you hear it, you decide within a couple of seconds, it's from a playlist, whether that's a playlist you follow or an algorithmic playlist or whatever. You hear it, you like make a decision whether or not invest in listening to the rest of that track. And to listen to 2.5 minutes with nothing to get to that point where you introduce the vocal, it's not realistic, right? And then if you're thinking about it in terms of a club mix, like maybe the DJ is going to bring it in here, bring the other track out here, the bass is coming in. There's not enough tension and release. There's not enough to grab onto.
You got me saying what's in my head, filling my mind with these images, yeah. And it's the way that you look at me. They ride it.
So I think the obvious solution here is to create like a second hook that's a melodic hook. So you could bring in the vocal there. You could also kind of tease it with some little chops or something like that. But like if you have like a melodic hook that you can keep the listener engaged with to hear, and then you bring in the vocal, and then the listener goes like, oh wow, that's cool. I wasn't expecting that, or but you need to have kept their attention up until that point.
I'm being
Yeah, I mean, it's it sounds quite cool because you've got a lot of space for that vocal. It's got really room to exist because the rest of the track's quite stripped back, but the arrangement is just really not working. So I think just rethink that. Probably, yeah, having like a secondary hook, like a melodic hook that if you think about it in terms of like if the track was an instrumental, would someone still recognize it and would it still be captivating for them? No offense, but I think in this case it would not. So that's something that I would suggest aiming for with your track. Solid bass, Joe. So this is it's kind of having the same thing as the last couple, but I think it's not that the elements don't exist. It's more like that they're just a bit too low in the mix. I need to make this like a plug-in on every track, a preset on every track for these. Right, so it's basic. There's some stuff there. It's just really low in the mix. So I kind of make a broader boost around here. And it's a terrible way to actually make it sound good, but I feel like when I do that, it a little bit more kind of personality or engagement jumps out of the track. So I think the low end and the high end sound good, but the mid-range elements are a bit too low in the mix. So going back to a couple of those previous tracks, here's like a good example of like having a couple of different hooks that you can bring in and out, and it just keeps things, you don't have to have everything playing at once. That's something that I think people often do in their tracks, is like they bring stuff in but they never bring it out. So it's like an amazing way to have like changes and evolution through your track, is just having a thing that comes in and then gets replaced with another thing. It could be two melodies, could be a vocal and a melody, and it gives you that kind of like those tools to just keep things changing up and keep them interesting. Yeah, I mean, I think the foundation is really solid. Maybe tweak the mix and yeah, to be honest, I think it's basically just more of a mix down thing than anything, and then the track would be pretty dope. So I think you can kind of like, it sounds like there's some stuff coming in for the track that's going to work, but like this section here, just, it doesn't sound like cohesive. Like any of this stuff, like if you've just got these kind of basic elements of your track going, you want it to sound awesome. Like before like all the vocal and kind of interesting stuff comes in that puts this stuff in out of the focus, I think the first thing you can do is get a different kick drum. You've got this massive kick drum here. Oh, okay. No, it's, oh, no, yeah, you do. That's filtered here. Like, that's just, that kick drum is huge by modern standards for the type of music that you're making. Like, most people would have a kick drum that looked, let me delete that, and I can't see my keyboard with with this microphone. That looked more like something like that, maybe a bit longer, but then that gives you space for your low end to happen. So like for your bass line there's room for the notes to happen in here. With this bass line that's taking up kind of 2/3 of a measure, there's no space for anything else to happen in the low end. And then also having the track's very limited already, so it's kind of pushing everything up in volume, but having like this intense shaker with no movement in the velocity or the tone or anything, it's just like there. And then the same with this like clave or rim or whatever it is, it just there's no groove. And then the sub comes in and there's no like low mids to, it's like I said, there's no room for it. It's just like, I think the bass is a bit low, but it's also not, you can't, so a really basic rule of kind of production is choose whether you have a massive kick or a massive bass, or a subby kick or a subby bass, because you can't have both, right? So in this case, something that would work quite well, since you've got this huge low kick, is having a bass that's a bit more mid-range focused, something like, I'm not saying it works for the style, but something like M1 house organ bass, you know, would punch through in this track. So there's no groove in your low end, you know, if I'm in the bathroom at the club and I'm like listening to the track on the dance floor and it's this one, all I'm hearing is There's no like, you can't hear the bass in between the kicks, right? Same thing still. The vocal's really harsh. It sounds like you've cut some frequencies, maybe like this in the mids. So it sounds quite unbalanced, but also is being that effect is being like increased in intensity by the amount of limiting on the track. Yeah, so for the amount of stuff that you've got going on in the track, also like that massive kick and that really subby bass is like just not really leaving any space for things. You've got too much mid-range cut out of like the vocals and the guitar and stuff, I think. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely some things there for you to improve on, so hopefully those are helpful. Okay, we got a track from my man Albuquerque. So totally different style to the last one, but he's doing something like he's doing the things that I was saying need to be done in the last one. So if I do the same thing and listen to just the kick and the bass, there's space for both to exist, right? There, you can hear them audibly, and each one of those sounds can be articulated by the speaker.
Just let the sunshine out. Let it fade. Wanna fade out. Let it break.
think in the bass it's cool, but it could be like, it feels like everything's at the same velocity, the same volume. So what I would recommend is like getting a bit of variation in there, and then on the synth add some like velocity sensitivity to the amplification envelope and the filter envelope, and that way like some of those the bass is going to sound a bit more alive, I think. So once you've done that, you can then use some compression or limiting or something to control the dynamics a bit more, but that way you get a little bit of like movement into the bass. Really nice. I like the way that string with the organ or synth or whatever was then layered with the string. It kind of helped to bring everything forward, or like progress everything, push everything forward in the track, and kind of build up the intensity, but in a really kind of tasteful way. So this new like stabby riff that you've brought in, kind of has the same thing as the bass. I think if the bass had a bit more movement, then it wouldn't sound so apparent that one doesn't have a great deal of movement. But with both of them happening like that, yeah, I would, like I said, try and get a bit more movement into the bass, but maybe into both. One other thing you could try is like with the drums, it kind of feels like the musical part of the track is like going for a minimal style, like like I don't know, like Piv kind of style or something. But then the drums and percussion is almost in a bit more of a stripped back organic house kind of style. So I think if you bring in like a little bit more punch and a little bit more tightness to the percussion, it's probably going to sound I think that could help it. Like some of the percussion could be a bit more snappy, some of the hats could be a bit more sharp on the transients. It's got this like almost like a shaker kind of main offbeat hat. I think if that had like, even if you're just layering it with like a 909 or 707 closed hat or something that sounds like that, not too high in the mix, just maybe low in the mix. I mean, listen to that contrast from here. Yeah, so I think the pad's really cool, but just choose where you want to use it and be aware of how it's affecting the rest of the track, because it's really intense. Okie dokie, DJ Ra. Guys, at the end here, you know, we're getting down to the last few minutes, so as always, the tracks at the end get a little bit less attention. So there you go, there's your motivation to get things in sooner. But basically we're just running out of time, and I'm not going to be here forever. You've got this kind of like, it's not an arpeggio, it's like a 16th note kind of pluck thing. I think that could definitely be up in the mix. Maybe you bring it in a bit later, but it's just sounding like it's a cool sound, and it's almost like frustrating that I can't hear it properly. So there's another kind of really quiet kind of, I don't know, like kalimba, arpeggio or melody or something coming in. I really hope that's going to come forward in the mix, but because it's like so faint, but that's what I want to listen to. That's what I want to grab onto. You can't even hear it anymore. It was like around here. Kind of going dun, 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 dun. I don't know.
In the night.
So I think the sample there is from Hot Since 82 and Jim Cook, the what's it called? Shit, I can't remember. There was a remix competition of it a couple of years ago.
I'm alright.
So I mean, I think everything's here for the track. It sounds really cool. It's just a matter of like, yeah, getting some of those sounds more in front, more in the, let me hear them, you know, like let me have something to grab onto in the track. Again, I was going to do this little filtering trick. So it sounds like you've brought more stuff in here, but then again, in the terms of the arrangement, like, is this really like the main part of your track? Yeah, so I think you want to look at the mix a bit and rethink the arrangement a little bit. Maybe that, there's room for the track to be a little bit longer, so that you kind of build up to this part and then have a bit more of an intro out from it. Those synths are a bit loud and they're not really working rhythmically or necessarily, maybe not tonally with the track either. I'm not sure if they're out of key, but they're definitely not like creating a pleasing melody to go along with the bass line. So I think like the idea is cool, but I think just the implementation could be done a bit better. Just bring it down in volume a little bit to balance it, and just it's basically the notes that you're selecting and the rhythm that they're playing, but then that is also being reproduced by the delay. So I mean, this part of the track without that bit sounds really good. Nice progression on the pads. Again, this synth part sounds a bit weird too. No, this one before. I mean, in this kind of thing, there's a lot. The track's not overcrowded, but it's quite fast. There's quite a lot of quite like fast, skippy hi-hats. The bass line's got quite a few notes on it. So simple is probably better on those melodic elements. Yeah, I think the idea of those melodic parts is right, but just simplify them, bring them down in volume a little bit, and just experiment until you get some notes that sound like really harmonically and rhythmically pleasing. Cool to see you messing around with some synths, Ian. I think on the bass in this break, you could like filter it out a bit. I think your drums and your percussion in general could be a bit louder. There's also like, so you've got the bass and this other synth that are playing, and they're kind of like, I don't know how to explain it. It's like it feels like it's two things playing parallel to one another, but they're not really connected, or they're not really working together. They're just kind of there, existing on their own, right? So when you're writing putting different elements into your track, try to get them kind of like sound like they're having a conversation, or like they're like call and response, like one's happening and then the next is complementing it. The like sound selection and stuff is really cool. There's not really a huge amount of stuff happening here, so I think you could definitely, I don't know, there's room for like another synth melody or something to come in here. There, I think you should have brought back in the hats and all that kind of thing. I guess you're going to do that a bit later. But yeah, there, when at that crash, I think you should have brought back all the main beats. But definitely sounding a lot more advanced than some of the stuff that you were submitting a year ago. So really good stuff, Ian. Well done. Something sounds quite off about this, like it almost sounds like there's something out of time, or but so for anyone watching, I'm speaking directly to Ian John because we work together, we do some sessions together. So I think it sounds like you could kind of, like, I know what you're trying to do with the drums, but I think it hasn't quite worked out. Everything could be a bit tighter still, I think. Let me cut that, sorry, and bring this in. It doesn't really work. I think the kick is also not working for the track. It should be definitely louder, but the bass is kind of overpowering it. But this here, like, it sounds a bit too chaotic. Like there's too much swing on, and too much maybe different swing on different elements or something like that. It sounds like you've got some, like, I like the vocal chop thing that you've got for the track. The pads and stuff have a cool atmosphere. Yeah, that's right, Joy. You're right. Yeah, it's kind of happening a bit. It's a bit too swung on the clap. So I know what you're trying to implement, and what I would recommend is literally find some top loops that sound in the, and this goes for anyone who's having trouble with their drums, getting them to sound the way they want, is like find some top loops that sound the way that you kind of want your drums to sound. And if you're trying to be able to write the drums yourself, then try and copy those top loops. Just make a little project of it, give yourself a little challenge to try and recreate that top loop. Or because the thing about doing it from a whole track is like there's a lot more stuff in there, it's hard to hear the details. But when you've got like a top loop or something, you can isolate and identify each element more easily. So then you can kind of like write your own drums and substitute one for the other from the top loop. I find it so hard to give feedback on these tracks that are so overly compressed, because they sound so, like it's a totally different style, but let's just compare it to like Mirage's track, which is also loud. It's not that you can't have a track that's loud, but getting a track that is loud doesn't start at the master. It's a totally different style of track, but it's like punchy and there's so much space and depth in the track, right? And this just sounds like everything is just right in your face, and it's tiring to listen to. Listen to this bit here where you take out the kick and all the hi-hats just jump up in volume, right? So you can hear another problem that's happening is you've got a bunch of reverb on these claps, and all that reverb, because the reverb is much quieter than the claps and the loudest peaks of the track. So that limiter is bringing up all of that like lower ambient sound, like the reverb, and it just kind of washes out the track a lot. So I think there's also there's a lot of stuff going on in the track that isn't really working in harmony with one another, like the bass line and then this kind of like vocal. you've got like this vocal kind of chop loop that's happening in the background, then like different vocal parts, then this kind of like keys thing, and then the bass line. Yeah, it's like, especially for the way that everything's right in front, it's just kind of too much stuff fighting for my attention. It's super tiring to listen to. Yeah. And I mean, it's like I showed the contrast between Mirage's track, but it's not just about the style. It's you could if I had a track from like, I don't know, Toolroom or something in here, you could also see the same comparison in that, and the Toolroom track would be just as loud, if not louder. It's just about having space and having subtracting the things that don't need to be there, not having everything playing over the top of each other chaotically. All right, guys, thank you very much for everyone tuning in, and especially everyone that submitted your tracks. I know it's a bit nerve-wracking to send your tracks in to be picked apart. Any criticism that I have, I'm just trying to help, I think it's awesome that you guys are trying to push yourselves to get better, and you're willing to take your egos out of it and submit your stuff to get torn apart. And at the end of the day, like, I try to keep my personal opinion about things, like my taste, out of it, and try to speak about things objectively. So at the end of the day, I'm just trying to give some advice and hopefully help. I'm not trying to hurt any feelings, but yeah. Anyway, everyone have a great Sunday, and I will see you on the dance floor. Australia, New Zealand, let's do this. Starting next week, I'll be on tour, so hope to catch you at some shows. All right, until next time. Lex, you sent your track on Saturday morning. Sorry, mate, if it's not in there. No, the cutoff was like, I still added some tracks that got sent while the stream was going on. Either the link didn't work or the track didn't have downloads enabled, I would imagine. I'll try and find your email and reply to that now. Okay, have a good Sunday, guys. Peace.